FPL double game week 28, my first transfer plans. In today's video, we're going to have a look at how my team is setting up for game week 28. I'm also planning on free hitting in game week 29, so that has a bit of an impact on the transfers I'm considering making this week. But I have 3 million in the bank. I have more injuries in my FPL team as we seem to every single week. So today I'm going to have a look at some potential players I'm considering buying this week. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. And a disclaimer, I'm recording at half time of the Manchester City versus Manchester United game. Erling Haaland has just missed an open goal from 1 yard out, which is probably the miss of the season as my captain, and I also own Phil Foden. So I'm hoping for some more points in the second half. Game week 27 has been okay for me. We'll review that more in a video later on in the week. But my team for game week 28 is lining up as it does on screen. It's a 3-4-3. I've got 4 double game week players in my team at the moment in Kaminsky, Doughty, Zabarnyi, and then Dominic Solanke as well, who did come through. Didn't get any returns, but good to see that he is fit and available before the double next week. Elsewhere in my team looks pretty okay. Haaland and Watkins up front. We've also got Son, who was my transfer in as part of a -4 this week, but it did mean that I did have to bench Anthony Gordon for his goal. Bukayo Saka and then Cole Palmer. And in defence, my only other defender is Gabriel, which I'm pretty pleased with. Now, naturally, this might look like a team that deserves to roll a transfer, and I could just roll a transfer and take 2 into next week. However, because as I mentioned, I'm planning on playing my free hit in game week 29, I have to use my transfer this week. You cannot roll a transfer into a free hit because the week after your free hit, you have 1 transfer no matter how many you had before. So my transfer this week is basically a use it or lose it situation. So I'm looking at potential moves that I want to make over the next couple of weeks, and it revolves completely around getting Mo Salah into my lineup. The Foden spot in my team at the moment is going to become Mo Salah. I can't really do it from any of my other midfielders apart from selling Son and Saka, both of which I prefer over Foden. So Foden up to potentially buy Salah in game week 30. Don't need him for game week 28 because he does play Manchester City, but from game week 30 onwards, the fixtures are really nice. But I don't have the money to do that. So my transfer this week is probably going to be trying to free up a little bit of money to make sure I can do that Foden to Salah move in game week 30 after my free hit for free. Now, there are a couple of other things that I could do this week around targeting the double game week a little bit more. I've got 2 Luton and 2 Bournemouth, which does in theory mean that I have room for an extra double game week player from both teams. Probably only 1. I'm not taking a hit. So 1 extra double game week player from either team if I wanted to this week. So the first option, and probably the more exciting option, would be to use my 1 free transfer this week to sell Foden to a double game week midfielder, probably Tavernier. It was Kluivert who scored for Bournemouth today. It would probably be a Bournemouth attacker over a Luton attacker, just because I prefer the double for Bournemouth much more with 2 home games rather than Luton going for 2 away games. They're a little bit injury ravaged at the moment. Ross Barkley could be a good pick, but he's hardly getting loads of FPL returns at the moment. I could have that for 1 week, but what that would mean is, yes, it would be a more exciting pick for me in game week 28 in the double, but going into game week 29, to do Tavernier up to Salah, I still wouldn't have the money. So I would be forced into doing 2 transfers in game week 30 and taking a -4 effectively. Now, the Trippier injury at the weekend was very annoying. He got subbed before the 60th minute and didn't keep that Newcastle clean sheet despite me having held him for so long. But it might be a little bit of a blessing in disguise because it makes the route to free up money for Salah a little bit easier if I went down this route. So Foden down to Tavernier and then Tavernier up to Salah, I would still have to free up money, and downgrading Trippier, I'd be left in game week 30 for a defender about 5 million or less in price. Now, there are a few defenders that I look in and around that value that I do quite like. The first one is I could go to Botman. I wish I could afford Share. He's been really good for Newcastle recently, but I can't. Botman and the Newcastle fixtures, actually part of the reason I wanted to hold Trippier was from game week 30, the fixtures do look really nice for them. West Ham at home, Everton at home in those 2. Could easily go there. Malagusto and Chelsea actually have a really nice run, and it doesn't look like Reece James is going to be back anytime soon. And Gusto, at just 4.2 million, does feel pretty nailed. Very good going forward. Chelsea are not exactly keeping loads of clean sheets at the moment, but he does have pretty good attacking threat, and the nice run of fixtures was there. and he's very cheap. So it would, leave a little bit of money in the bank as well. And the final one is to go to Mitchell. Crystal Palace look a little bit better defensively. Yes, they shipped late goals to Spurs, but until about the 75th minute, they were looking very good once again. They only conceded 1 goal before that in the 2.5 games that they played under their new manager, and Mitchell is playing at wing back as well. So those are the top 3 sort of cheap defenders. Of course, Crystal Palace, Chelsea and Newcastle all have good short-term fixtures until I plan to play my wild card in and about game week 34 and game week 35 as well. So that would be the defender I would go to. Of course, I wouldn't make that defender transfer this week. It would be just Foden to Tavernier this week. Then when game week 30 comes around, I do Tavernier to Salah and I downgrade Trippier to a cheaper defender for a -4 in order to afford that. Now, that is a -4, and I do wonder whether Tavernier is really worth a -4 in my team going into the double. Will he outscore a Foden or someone else like a Gordon who I've got on my bench by 4 points? Is it really worth it? I'm not 100% sure. So I do wonder about just selling Trippier this week and then either starting Foden or starting the player I bring into my team and then just having the money ready in the bank to do Foden to Salah for free in game week 30. I originally thought that Tavernier would be the one I'd go with and I'd do the hit. But having watched Bournemouth today, I'm not as confident on that. Now, I do think he'll start both in the double because they have a week off between game week 27 and 28. And then they don't play in the cup after game week 28. So they play 2 games in really quick succession. I expect him to start both. And then they have sort of 2 weeks off because it's the international break. If they had a fixture in game week 29, the chances of your Bournemouth players playing both in the double would drop. But because there's no fixture, they could work. However, Trippier down to a cheaper option is probably the sensible thing to do. There are a couple of options I could go in here. Now, I could actually go to a Bournemouth defender. Originally, I had Senesi in this graphic, but he looks like he's picked up what is a hamstring issue. I'd be very surprised if we see him play at all in game week 28, but of course, wait for the press conference later in the week until we get a bit of an update to have that confirmed or not. Now, his replacement in that Bournemouth team is Metham, 4.3 million, so a good cheaper option, depending on how long that we expect to see Senesi out for, could be a nice cheap option in that Bournemouth defence who have just kept a clean sheet away at Burnley. Now, the only issue with that is when game week 30 comes around, because I've already got Zabanyi, I'd have a double up on the Bournemouth defence, which doesn't necessarily feel right. So out of all the defenders we spoke about previously, it could be any of those. Like I could just do Trippier to Gusto, Trippier to Botman, Trippier to Mitchell. Gusto is probably the one I favour, just because in game week 30, a nice fixture at home to Burnley, when there was a lot of other difficult fixtures that week in particular. So I could just do that Trippier move to Gusto this week, leave the money in the bank, and then in game week 30, have the money to do Foden up to Salah. Now, Gusto has a difficult fixture this week, so I would play Foden probably away at Liverpool over playing Gordon, who's also on my bench, away at Chelsea. Now, I did want to add, I always get told that this video is useful, but it's very focused on my team. So I do want to take an added segment in this video where I start adding a few of the very sort of high profile, hot topic questions going into the double in game week 28 and every single game week. The first one is, who are the best double game week players and are they worth taking a -4 for? Now, whether you're going to free hit in game week 29 does change this answer a little bit, because for me, the best options are the Bournemouth ones because their double is definitely better. So the best attacker, in my opinion, is Solanke. The best midfielder is probably Tavernier. The best defender, it's pretty close between Doughty of Luton and then probably Zabanyi at Bournemouth. And in goal, the best one is Neto. However, if you're not free hitting in game week 29, you're better off looking at Luton players because they double in game week 28 and then play in game week 29. Now, I would still go Solanke. I still think Solanke for the double is worth it. We have heard that he's not fully fit, but he does expect to play both in the double. Then looking at some of the others. In midfield, if you need a midfielder for the double, I'd go someone like Ross Barkley over going for Tavernier because it guarantees you the fixture in game week 29 if you need it. In defence, if you need a fixture in game week 29, definitely go for Alfie Doughty over one of the Bournemouth defenders. And in goal, I'd probably go for Kaminsky over Neto if you need a fixture in game week 29. And are they worth a -4? So I probably would consider them a -4 if it adds extra 2 fixtures effectively. So if you have a player in your defence who has one fixture in game week 28 and then blanks in game week 29, and you bring in a Luton defender or a Luton midfielder or a Luton attacker even, you're not only getting the extra fixture in game week 28, you're getting the extra fixture in game week 29. So I would consider a hit. Now, are any of the Bournemouth players worth a hit this week? probably only Solanke. I don't think a defender is worth a hit this week. I'd rather just play what you've got. And the Luton ones are only worth a hit if it adds an extra fixture for you in game week 29. Now, should you sell Manchester City this week? The second half of this game might impact a little bit, but I know a lot of people will be considering, if you're dead ending into game week 29, so you need the fixture in game week 29, of doing something like Haaland out, Morris in, or Haaland out, Solanke in, and I don't hate it. Now, if you are free hitting in game week 29, I wouldn't sell your Manchester City assets. You could sell an Ake, you could sell a Foden potentially, like I am, but Haaland I wouldn't sell. But Haaland out is potentially worth it if you need that player in game week 29, because as we spoke about, it is worth a potential extra fixture. Now, the final one is best defenders to buy. There aren't really loads to talk about. Arsenal still number one. Then probably Luton if you need a fixture in game week 29. Outside of that, Newcastle look okay, but their defensive data has been pretty poor and they played Chelsea this week. West Ham as well, potentially Villa. It's really difficult. So to be honest, the only defenders I'd really recommend at the moment are Arsenal, doubling up in there if you have a space, getting a double game week defender this week and reviewing once again in game week 30. So just to summarize that, I'm basically in a use it or lose it situation with my transfer this week because I'm going to free hit in game week 29. The real plan for me would be to downgrade Trippier, who does look like he picked up a bit of an injury, and free up a little bit, the last little bit of money that I need to do Foden up to Salah in game week 30 after my free hit. Now, I have the two choices. I could go Gusto and just bench him this week against Newcastle and play Phil Foden away at Liverpool, or I could go for a second Bournemouth defender in the likes of Metham and play him and bench Foden this week. Now, personally, I don't really want to carry double Bournemouth defence in the long term as much as it might be better for me this week. So I think Trippier to Gusto, leaving Gusto on my bench and playing the 3-4-3 that we've got here with the Dominic Solanke captaincy ready this week. Now, my vice captain is on Alfie Doughty. I don't actually see someone I massively want to put the vice on. It might end up on Bukayo Saka even with a single game week. But that is the plan this week of Trippier down to Gusto. Free up the money that I need so in game week 30 I can do Foden up to Mo Salah. We've answered a few of the hot topic questions already in this video, so go and check that out. Little new addition to this video which I hope you find useful. If not, and it hasn't answered your question, drop it in the comment section down below. 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.